My fellow Nigerians, as your future president, today I want to react to the announcement yesterday, Wednesday, July 2, 2025, of the formal establishment of the National Opposition Coalition for the 2027 general elections on the platform of the African Democratic Congress Party, the ADC. First, this is obviously a game changer for 2027 because it has been abundantly clear for some time now that Bola Tinubu's whole game plan for 2027 is to use state power to weaken the opposition and effectively make Nigeria a one-party state under the APC. Why? Because he obviously knows that his performance on the economy and on security, for example, has been extremely poor. Second, the ADC isn't made up of angels. That must be very clearly said. No political party is or ever will be. Political parties, by their nature, will always be a reflection of the broader society in which they exist. As long as our Nigerian society has the good, the bad, and others, our political parties will similarly consist of the good, the bad, and others. I like the point that political analyst Shehu Ghazali Sadiq made on X a couple of hours ago when he said, and I quote, "The disciples of Jesus were not all saints. There was Judas among them, yet Jesus fulfilled the salvation mission. There may be people you don't like in the coalition, but they cannot stop the rescue mission if the leader is focused and determined." End of quote. So yes, with politics, as with everything else, leadership is crucial. That's why if the ADC coalition sticks together and picks the right presidential candidate in 2027, in other words, Peter Obi, they will absolutely win the 2027 presidential election. And yes, that's even if Nyesom Wike and the INEC chairman Mahmoud Yakubu again rig the election for Tinubu like they did in 2023. That said, one point of inspiration about why I believe the ADC could make a positive difference comes from the party having a collective spirit at its core. What do I mean? When the ADC was founded in 2005, that's 20 years ago, it was named the Alliance for Democratic Change. That name was changed later on to the African Democratic Congress to align with the party's broad Pan-African ideology. Also in 2018, the ADC was chosen by former President Olusegun Obasanjo as the platform for his coalition for Nigeria movement. That's for the 2019 elections. Again, and more symbolically, when we look at the top 6 ADC leaders, that's apart from the founding chairman Rav Nwosu, who sat at the high table at the Yaradua Center event where the ADC coalition was announced yesterday, we'll notice that there was an equal representation of our 6 geopolitical zones in Nigeria. From left to right, we had, of course, Peter Obi, a former Anambra governor for the Southeast, Ralph Aregbesola, former Osun governor and former interior minister and now interim national secretary for the Southwest, David Mark, former Senate president and now interim national chairman for the North Central. We also had, of course, Atiku Abubakar, the former vice president for the Northeast, Chibuike Rotimi Amechi, former Rivers governor and transportation minister for the South-South, and finally Nasir El-Rufai, the former FCT minister and Kaduna state governor for the Northwest. Now that's quite different from the APC, which back in 2013 was largely a merger of the political parties controlled by 2 strong men, Tinubu's ACN and Buhari's CPC, and a few governors from elsewhere. Beyond this symbolism, I am pleased that the ADC's interim national chairman is David Mark, a former army general and former Senate president, renowned for coming up with the doctrine of necessity to make then Vice President Goodluck Jonathan the acting president when late President Umaru Yar'Adua was out of the country due to his failing health between late 2009 and early 2010, without transmitting an official letter informing the National Assembly that he was going on medical leave. Without that doctrine of necessity, Jonathan couldn't constitutionally act as president since Yar'Adua was, as it were, still alive, but hadn't sent that letter. Mark's intervention was a bold move for fairness and constitutionality because, of course, there were some top government officials who enjoyed the political vacuum created by President Yar'Adua's absence and who wanted to remain in control without an acting president. It is a fact that Mark's use of that doctrine of necessity to fill that vacuum absolutely prevented a major constitutional crisis in Nigeria. Indeed, among other things, that move definitely helped Mark regain his respect among lovers of democracy after he previously supported efforts to amend the constitution to give former President Obasanjo a third term in 2006. Again, the very fact that Mark remains the longest serving Senate and National Assembly president till date, serving between 2007 and 2015, and that he presided over the affairs of the seat and seven senates with maturity and tactfulness, suggests that he'll be a fair minded and above board interim chairman of the ADC. Such fair mindedness is particularly crucial in the context of a coalition because, of course, there will always be contending political interests, including those that go against, in our case, the aspirations of most objective and patriotic Nigerians. Atiku Abubakar, for example, ever the perennial presidential candidate, is likely to run for president again in 2027, which will be about the seat time, despite it being clear that the mood of the nation in 2027 will favor a Southern ADC presidential candidate. Hopefully, with David Mark in charge for now, there will be a level playing field ahead of the party's presidential primaries in 2026, which is exactly what a very popular candidate like Peter Obi needs to thrive. In fact, Obi left the PDP in 2022 before joining the Labour Party, precisely because it was clear to him that the PDP wasn't going to allow for a level playing field and that it was going to be a contest driven solely by money. That is to say, whoever was going to give the voting delegates the most money. David Mark is highly respected by all, if not most, of the stakeholders in the ADC. So Atiku Abubakar and his like wouldn't be able to push him around. In fact, I'm hoping that that's David Mark, and others will make it clear at some point that for the sake of fairness and national unity, the ADC must adopt a Southern presidential candidate in 2027. Otherwise, Tinubu and his guys will simply campaign on 2027 is still the turn of the South. And that alone, of course, will greatly weaken the ADC's appeal in most of the South. On my part, I will be watching and making necessary inputs where possible. May God bless the ADC and may God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria.